welcome back to the Veterans Radio Show. I hope you're having an amazing day, and thank you so much for tuning in, especially on a Friday. On our Veterans Radio Show, we talk with heroes in action, making it happen for our veteran community. I am your host, Dali, Army veteran, and we want to thank you, especially to our live audience on Facebook, on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Amazon Live, and of course, our podcast listeners. We appreciate you and we appreciate your service. This is a Veterans Radio Show, and without you, we would not be here. So hit that subscribe button and please share this episode with another veteran, and let's hear your thoughts in the comments during the show. We love seeing comments and questions, and it helps get the ball rolling here on the show. We have a very special guest today. He is the founder of Blind Guide, and he's a U.S. Navy veteran. And so without further ado, here is Ed. Welcome to the show, Ed. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much, Dolly.
We wanted to bring you on because you have a special, I guess, thing that you're doing here for our community. But before we dive right into that, let's talk a little bit about you and about your prior military service. Can you tell us a little bit about, what you did, how long you served?
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. I'm a graduate of the Naval Academy, and I spent 10 years in the Navy nuclear power program. I'd say it was a little bit of an unusual 10 years, and I commend all of the people that are listening because a lot of them probably spent a lot more time deployed than I did. I actually spent 2 of my 10 years at sea and the rest of the time on the Carl Vinson when it was being built and teaching NROTC and doing other things. So I think it's amazing what some people have done, and I think I'm proud of what I've done, but I've probably done much less in terms of actual deployment.
Oh, you know what? I can understand how you feel that way, but the work that you do still is super, super important. And you probably don't even realize how you touched other people, but you can't discount that. You can't at all. And we're very thankful for that. So tell us, what did you do aside from your job in the military, right? But what did you do with your career? Like what that perhaps led you to do what you do today?
So there are 2 things that answer that question. I left the Navy and one day later was employed at a large biopharmaceutical company, the Merck and Company. And I spent another 21 years there. So 31 years between the Navy and Merck, and one day unemployed. And that was really just a drive from North Carolina up to the Philadelphia suburbs. That doesn't really account for what I'm doing today, though. It does account for my passion about helping veterans find meaningful employment, especially those with disabilities. But the other part of my picture is my mom. She lost her sight to age-related macular degeneration in the 1990s. I'm an only child. My dad had died early, and she was living in Florida at the time. We were in the Philly suburbs, and I didn't know anything about being around somebody who was blind. Except that I knew we needed to move her. So we moved her from Florida up to Pennsylvania, found an association for the blind, and they restored her independence. She traveled outside the country for the first time in her life, and it was after losing her sight. She became a frequent traveler on Philly Rapid Transit. She became a speaker. So she learned to thrive. Tying that back to Merck, I had an obligation, or at least an interest in giving back to the community, maybe going back to military days also. So I joined the Association for the Blind board. I was on there for 13 years. I was also board president. But I would have told you it was my give back. And I also would have told you, well, I'll step beyond that. So after an early retirement, not my plan, early retirement at age 52 with 2 kids in college, I struggled to get back into work. And what I finally realized, and it took other people to tell me this, is my passion wasn't for what I had done for 31 years. I want to be clear, I'm very proud of having been in the Navy. I'm very proud of having worked at Merck, but neither was a passion. They were just really great employers. My passion was helping people thrive with vision loss, and that is what has taken me to where I am now. I've been involved with startups. I've been involved with assistive technology. And what's most interesting to the audience here, I think, is I'm involved in trying to help people who are blind, visually impaired, and especially those who are veterans or military spouses find meaningful employment. There are far too many people unemployed. And that ties directly to my passion. I think it's critical that we find meaningful work when we want to work.
I absolutely agree. And you know what? You hit on a really good point. You're proud of your military service, and I am too. I was a mechanic, but that wasn't my passion. And I think that that's okay, and we all have our different phases throughout life where we want to try out different things, although they're not our passions. But what I love about your story is that it came from something so personal. Your mom, her experience, it opened, I guess, the opportunity to see other people's challenges, and you created a solution for your mom and for so many other people. So at what point, how long after your mom had that diagnosis and you went through all that, did you create your company?
So it ties back to me leaving Merck. It was actually 3 years. And as I say, for everyone listening, if you don't network, you need to network. It's a critical skill, and it's one I did not have. I would have told you I did. In fact, I want to touch on passion one more time. When I was at Merck, if somebody had said, "What is your passion?" I would have told you strategic planning. I look back later, that's not a passion. It was a skill. I think I was very good at it and I was compensated well for it, but I wasn't passionate. I wasn't going to give $100,000 to the Strategic Planning Institute. It wasn't a passion. It was only a skill. So I spent 3 years, because I didn't have a network, trying to find a way back into meaningful employment, and really with no success. Others pointed out what I needed to do. So um, it took the answer is 3 years. I left Merck and I formed the company almost immediately, because you need that for consulting and contracting, but I wasn't
Mhm.
doing anything with it. So maybe end of my story there is, if you don't know what your passion is, ask people around you what it is. I don't think most of us are self-aware enough. Find out what it is. And the best way to discover it is my question I always ask. If I handed you $1 million and you could not keep it, what would you do with it? And the answers I
Ooh.
hear are, oh, I'd give to childhood education. I would give to autism. In my case, I would give to people who are blind. That's your passion. And I think uncovering that, you don't have to work in it, but understanding it changes everything about how you approach life.
Yeah, I agree. I love what you just said. And so, now that you've been running your company for a while, what are some insights you'd like people to be aware of regarding the blind community?
First, I'll say something about having your own company. I remember when I was early retired from Merck, I was somewhat devastated, and all of my friends were, "You are so lucky." Why am I lucky? I'm unemployed now. I think there's a myth that if you start your own company, and a lot of veterans are nowadays, and I think it's a great move, but there's a myth that that's a short path to wild riches and lots of time off. And it's none of those things. I worked every bit as hard as I did when I was at Merck, probably harder, and I earn less. But I love what I'm doing, and I do have a freedom of schedule. So, not freedom of hours, but freedom of schedule. But what I would say, you ask about the blind community and how this applies, and it's so true. There are a lot of blinded veterans, some age related, some service related, but the average across all people who are blind is 70% unemployed.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's a sin, because people who are blind can do almost everything. I always joke, not neurosurgery yet. I don't want somebody who's blind operating on my brain. But with robotic surgery and other things, maybe in 5 years, who knows? I think that's possible. But the bottom line is, somebody who's blind can do almost everything. And society has made people who are blind feel like they can do nothing. I had a great conversation earlier today. I think it's very relevant. There are a lot of organizations called lighthouses that are for the
Mhm.
blind. So there's Miami Lighthouses, Lighthouse Louisiana. They're all distinct, but they all have this mission of helping the blind. And it's actually a Navy veteran who I was talking to. He said he joined the company and he had only been there a few weeks, and he went to see some of the people who were blind and what they were doing, and they were putting caps on bottles. And he looked at them and at the staff and said, that's not work. Yeah, they're getting paid. It's work, but that's not a job. He said, I don't think I want to see any of the folks who are blind doing anything that we can't find on Indeed or a job board. If it's not on a job board, it's not a job. It's employment, but it's marginal and it's unacceptable. So what he did, and this is a message for anyone on the audience, and it's not just about blindness, it's about any disability. You need to look at what you can do, and you need to find an employer that cares about what you can do. His example, so putting caps on bottles, really pointless. What he did is he got the management to buy a capper and a bottler. So those are robotic equipment that is going to do that. And he taught the people who are blind how to run the software and how to run the machines and the robots. Mm-hmm. Several of those people are now with jobs that are 90 to 100,000 a year doing meaningful high-tech work after working 40 hours a week putting caps on bottles. They were able to do it. Society and even the people that believe in them didn't understand enough to help them realize what was possible.
Thank you so much for sharing that example, because I have seen that. I've seen where people think, so, I mean, they're so disconnected from the reality, right? And it just because they have one difference, they think, oh, they must not be able to, all these assumptions. And it starts really young too. So I love that you mentioned that. And I hope that people have that they share that story with their children, because that's how you change the way that society thinks of people. And yes.
Might I offer one other? It's another example, and it should teach you to think bigger. And you're drawing attention to children. It's interesting because in that same conversation, the person I was talking to said so many parents of children who are blind, and we'll go back to almost any disability, but in this case blind, shelter their children to the point that they can't be independent even though they're able to be independent. But the second story, this is out of Walgreens. Walgreens, if you don't know them, are just an amazing employer of people with disabilities. In their distribution centers, they have 30% people with disabilities. Mainstream company, they have 10% overall. But they have forklift drivers who are deaf. So we'll skip out of blindness. This is deafness. And your first reaction might be, oh, they're driving a huge machine with a lot of power that could really hurt somebody and they can't hear. Their safety record is better than the people who are able to hear. And the reason for it isn't, obviously they can't hear. It's because they're more attentive. They know they can't hear, and because of that, they pay more attention to their surrounding. There's a related story about people in business development that people who are blind are better salespeople because they listen better. So having disabilities doesn't give you less skill, it gives you different skill. And in some cases, it could be superior to somebody that is what they call typically abled now. So you need to believe in yourself. And if nothing else, connect with me, because I can introduce employers to you who believe in the value of veterans, military spouses, and people with disabilities.
I love that. Yeah, I've heard that so much, that when you lose one sense, others heighten. And so you just gave us two great examples of that. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, in speaking about employers, so does your organization, how does your organization link up the employer with the employee?
So I work with a couple of different companies. For my role, it's primarily mentoring. And if somebody goes to my website, I think it's theblindguide.com. If they go to the website, there are a lot of links that will explain that. But I work with two other veteran-owned companies, veteran-founded companies that I think may have both been on your show. The one is Veterans Ascend, and Robin Grable, if she hasn't been, will be soon. She's working with over 60 employers, including things like the Red Cross and Procter & Gamble. And we have 10,000 veterans and military spouses on the database. Her algorithm brings them together based on skills, compensation, and location. No resume. A resume is a huge impediment to somebody who's transitioning, not if you've been out for a while. Mm-hmm. But if you're transitioning and your resume says I was a rifleman, people say, oh, you can be in security. But anybody listening here knows you can do a lot of other things. Security is fine, but you can do many other things. So Robin has eliminated the resume. She translates the military skills to civilian, and she matches you up with jobs based on skills, not titles or resumes. So she's wonderful. And again, you can link to her via my site. The other is veteran tax credits. I'm almost positive he's been with you. And that's just, it's free for a veteran, and it gives you an edge over somebody with similar skills because the employer gets a tax credit. So it's just databases that are all free for the veterans to connect you. not just to an employer who says they're military friendly, but to one who has already paid money to be part of these systems, and they're tied therefore emotionally and financially to them.
I love that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's such a good resource. I don't hear too much of organizations such as yours, and I'm not sure if it's because the community is very small, or maybe there's just not enough awareness. But I'm very grateful that you're bringing this to our audience, because it definitely deserves the attention. Another thing that I saw on your website, on the blindguide.com, is that you uh, support the caregivers, and you mentioned earlier mentorship. Would you be able to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So my role with my mom was a caregiver. I'm sighted. I've learned an awful lot since then. But caregiver to me, it's not as hard as being the person with the disability, but it's really close. And the difference is most people, both caregivers and the people around them, ignore the plight of the caregiver. So you think about a parent who's trying to raise a child with disabilities, or somebody trying to work while caring for a parent with disabilities. That stress that is part of that job is just incredible. And few people see them and they feel guilty saying anything. How can I complain about what's going on with me when I don't have problems? I'm just trying to help a spouse or a child. So it's a tremendously difficult role. And if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't help the person you want to take care of. So that's a huge focus. The other side on the mentorship, I don't do a lot of it. I do a lot of networking and helping people. I do have a paid opportunity to mentor, but I can do it, but it's more about the things we're talking about today. It's just realizing you already have this inside. If you want my help, I'm happy to help, but I'm also happy to give you a lot of things to encourage you and help you get through that battle. I think we all need mentors, and I think it's back to self awareness. I think a mentor keeps you honest with yourself because you make commitments to them, and they force you to articulate both in writing and verbally what your goals are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mentorship, from what I read, the stats is that people, their chances of getting better pay, better jobs, living a more fulfilled life increases when they're mentored by someone, whether it's a mentor in the professional or in the personal field. So thank you for pointing that out. Now, you've been running this company for a while now. So can you share with us what are some of the challenges that you have faced throughout this journey?
One is that it takes a lot of work. So when I was early retired from Merck, my wife also started up what's become a very successful style and design blog. Both of us work 7 days a week. We go on vacation, we spend an hour or two on our laptop at a minimum. We take calls. So part of it, which is very different from being in a mainstream company, is you're never off. We both are solo LLCs, so there is nobody to back us up. It's us, and because we're a couple, it's not like one can back the other up. If we're on vacation, we still have to. So it's back to that myth. It's not the work less hours. You have to do everything yourself. When I was at Merck, if I had IT trouble, I called the help desk. When you're on your own, there's no help desk. You just, or you pay for it, but you have to do that. And it's an interesting segue that I want to mention. People who are blind actually tend to have better IT skills than people who are sighted. And the reason for that is most help desks don't understand JAWS and other accessibility software. So they have to learn how to do it themselves and how to do the integration. So they aren't going to be equal to, they probably can be superior to in IT skills. I think that those are probably the two hardest things, that you are really alone. You have to, everything comes back to you. And if you're a small business owner, let's say you have a small business, 20 or 30 people, the pressure that's associated with that, because their livelihoods are all tied to you and what you're doing. And no matter, the same is true of a CEO of a large company, but I think we think less about it as a small business owner. But it's
Mhm.
there. You screw up intentionally or unintentionally, and a lot of people suffer, not just you.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well, because I too have an LLC, and I'm the customer service, the shipping and receiving everything, and I'm pretty sure a lot of our
Absolutely.
viewers can relate to that. Um, so my next question is, if you were to be able to speak to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say, younger self, you need to find your passion. That's what I said earlier. I
Mhm.
I think I'm going to say the Navy nuclear power program is a very competitive, difficult program to get into. So I could say, on one hand, I was in an elite program. I was also very average in that program. And then when I went to Merck, it's a program, it's a company that hires primarily Ivy League. So I had a great college education, but I probably wasn't at the pinnacle of that. So I chose things that to me were difficult, and I felt that was the right thing to do. And I was average within a difficult environment. And as I said, I wasn't necessarily passionate about it, although I worked hard. I would say, uncover your passion. I think it's a myth that you'll never work another day in your life. I don't think that's true at all. You'll work very hard. You'll work many days, and some days will stink. But because it's your passion, I think you'll love what you're doing. And I think there's a magic to that. And what I would say, some of the best advice I ever received was, it's great if you can work in your passion, but if you can't, find a job that you're proud of, work hard at it, but use all your spare time and your money to indulge your passion. Don't work
Mm,
60 or 70 hours a week at that job. It's a 40 hour or 50, whatever it is. Give it, do it well, but save the extra energy and the extra money for the thing you really care about. And eventually, that's probably where you're going to end up anyway.
yeah. Ooh, that's such good advice. I love it. Thank you so much. And Ed, I mean, you are running such an important business that touches so many in the community, and it's not just people with impaired vision. It's their family members. Because we all know if we don't have a job, then our immediate family members are impacted. So how can we help you? How can we help you thrive in this journey that you're on?
The best way is to spread the word about what I do. I'm in the middle of recruiting for something right now where we're trying, the VA wants to do usability studies. They want to make sure that their website and their apps are accessible to people with disabilities, not just blind, but blind is my focus. I've been working, um, um, I see I'm frozen, or are you able?
Yeah, it's okay, but I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm trying to recruit for that. I've been working on that for 3 months, and I've gotten 60 people. And there are thousands, tens of thousands of people that fit into that category. And I think it's people who are blind tend to isolate themselves and not to believe that there are opportunities. I really don't earn much of anything on my website, so just developing an audience is critical to me, and it costs nobody pays anything, nor do I receive any. Once they're there, then they can look at the other things that I'm doing that I mentioned, Veterans Ascend and like that, and then that lets that does help me the other way. So
Right. And so where can people reach out to you?
they can reach me at the Blind Guide. It's all put together as one word, and it's theblindguide.com. It has all of my contact information there. I welcome followers, and there's really no one I won't try to help. I have a very large LinkedIn audience, and I love trying to help people find not only their passion but just get connected. It's that I derive more joy from that than probably anything else I do.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. And it's good to know that you're also on LinkedIn. Well, we thank you so much, Ed, for coming on here. You shared about your business and that beautiful story of how something so personal, your mom losing her vision, led to you creating the Blind Guide. And here you are helping so many people. So thank you so much. And we will absolutely make sure that we spread the word to help you continue to thrive and continue to help other people who have a vision impairment. Thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure and my honor. Thank you very much for all that all of you are doing.
Thank you. So there you have it, everybody. Ed, please go to theblindguide.com and support him. Just, it's simple. Just grab the link, share it with somebody, share it on your social media, wherever you can. Because that's how we spread the word. You never know who is looking for a resource like this one. And this is very, very valuable. So that's all the time we have today on the Veterans Radio Show. We will have the show again next Friday at 1 p.m. And we want to thank our sponsors for supporting our veterans and the Veteran Radio Show. Thank you to Kelly, who was in the audience. Sorry, Shelly, our other co host, for being present. And thank you all for your service and for continuing to support our military community. We're going to move on now to have our legal segment with the amazing Kelly, who, if you've been following us for a while, then you know who she is. And we're going to continue our discussion about investments. So join us. Don't go away. Hi, how are
There
you?
we
And
are.
Joe is here. Welcome.
Hello, Joe. Nice to see you. Thank you,
Not,
Dali.
yeah, nice seeing
You're
you,
very
Kelly. Hi,
welcome.
Dali. That was a
Hi,
great
hi,
interview,
Joe.
by the way.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Go ahead, you have the lead on this one.
Well, thank you. We just want to welcome Kelly again for second portion of the segment. Last time we were very impressed and we learned so much. I mean, we always learn so much from Kelly. It's really nice, and like I always said, I never had a better experience with an attorney that the way I have it with Kelly. She's having the ability to put things in a conversational way that makes our brains understand the legalese of the world. And I compare that to IT or accounting, because if you're an accountant, you have the mindset of an accountant, then you understand the numbers. I do not. I love math, but accounting is totally on the left field. And same thing with legalese stuff. If you're not legally minded, all the jargon, it makes no sense. So thank you, Kelly, for helping us understand all those things that, I send stuff to Kelly is like, what are these people talking about? Please help me understand because it's just so different. So thank you again for coming back, Kelly. And
My pleasure,
so,
Joe. The legal world is so different. And you and I have something else in common too. Numbers and I just don't get along. My husband, on the other hand, he's a walking calculator. Me, I can't even
That's
add.
nice.
Right?
different world, right?
Exactly. I can read and act and interpret that for you, but as far as numbers go, yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's
Well,
totally
I'm
different
excited
world.
about this, Kelly, because knowing that today we're talking about investments, I was like, Kelly's going to teach us how to be rich.
That's right.
That's the
He's
goal,
giving us the
darling.
secrets. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Perfect.
and that's really, I mean, making money is easy. Just finding the path and the way that you go for it, that's the key. I know your previous guest was talking about the passion, and 100% support that. What Kelly does, you can see her passion, but there is one piece missing in things. If you have the passion and you have the skill, you have a perfect match. It's like a perfect marriage. So what Kelly has is the passion and the skill to do both. And I think that's key. And I think when we find that, like people who are that work within the chamber, I think all of us have found that match, that perfect connection that we do what we love to do and we're good at it. And it's key. It's totally key. So yeah. So Kelly, tell us how people can be rich.
Exactly. Do you have more than half an hour scheduled for this?
Yeah,
I
we all.
have Yeah, I
So
have.
a little bit rich then,
There
because we
you
only
go.
have a few
Exactly.
minutes.
Just not too much, right?
Not too much. No, not too much.
We should spread it out over the months to come, so people will dial in. They're gonna listen to the show. Your audience is gonna triple, quadruple. But I am totally in an agreement with you. The last guest, Ed, was absolutely fantastic, and that's exactly what we do here at the law firm. Joe and
Mhm.
Dali, we turn passions into profits, right?
Oh my
That
gosh, that's
that's
right. That's
exactly the
right.
goal,
Yeah.
turning passions into profits. Now, as a lawyer, I do have to
Oh
say
yes, the
my
disclaimer, please.
disclaimer. Thank you. Yes. Any information that we share on the air with anyone, it is only for informational purposes. And if anyone is interested in discussing any legal topics that they may have, they can absolutely reach out to us. And we're everywhere. They just have to Google baglalaw.com or even just Google me, kellybagla.com.
Right, and Kelly is on top of the Google search. So just except Kelly, and that's the only one that shows up. But
There you go.
And and y'all, did you see Laura's comment? She's watching right now, and her comment in regards to the math. It's easy, Mr. Chamber. 1, 2, 3. 1 plus 2 plus 3. Math.
right.
But here, yeah. So let's talk about these investments. I know that last month we did speak a little bit about them, and you mainly focused on one. But what other types of investments are there?
Okay. So remind me as well before we end the show. I have a joke to share with you. I think you're
Okay.
going to find it pretty funny.
Well, I think
Let me
start
write
with
that.
a joke.
Forget.
There you go. So last time I was on the show, Joe and I, we spoke about the different types of equity. So how can a small business raise money by providing investors equity? And there's so many different ways of providing investors equity. And Joe is completely right. There is so much money out there. On a weekly basis, I'm helping clients sell their businesses. There are buyers out there right now. And then the sellers have a variety of different options. It's not just here's the cash, goodbye, and the sellers go off and live their life. The sellers are, this is their baby, right? They've built a business from scratch. They've made it into a profitable business, and it does attract buyers. Buyers can be, again, competitors, or there can be someone in the same field that just wants to grow by adding more businesses to their portfolio. Now, last time we spoke about issuing stock, it does fall under the SEC regulations, and which is the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I also spoke about different types of investors. So there's two of them today that I'd like to speak about. The first one is an angel investor. I know that there's a little bit of confusion between the two types. So one is the angel investor, and then the other one is a venture capitalist. So an angel investor is usually, it could be either one person or it could be a group of people that pull their money together and they will invest in either a startup, usually a startup. They probably won't invest in something that a business that is already mature, because mature businesses are looking for multi-million dollars to take their business to the next level. An angel investor is defined by how much money that they invest in a business. And that's usually probably anywhere from, you know, $50,000, $100,000, all the way up to about $1 million. That's usually characterized as an angel investor. Anything above 1 million, 1 million above would be a venture capitalist firm. A venture capitalist firm is usually comprised of private offices, if you will, ultra high net worth individuals that pool their money together. And now they've got a vast reach. And it's not just national, it's actually international as well. So there are quite a bit of privately owned offices. That's usually what the term is. In England, for example, in London. And you always have investors that are interested in investing in the USA, especially when it comes to technology. Who doesn't love technology? Me. I can't work it, but I'm here, right? So and especially now, I think the biggest thing right now is obviously crypto, and it's also security, right? It's quantum cyber security, and there are so many. Um, Engineers, the software engineers just around the world that are creating software that can actually combat all of these attacks, the cyber attacks that people are experiencing literally on a daily basis. You'll get an email. I still get emails. You'll get an email, and especially from someone that says, this is a escrow company. Please, 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 audience, do not open those and don't click on the link, because those are scam. They are they're trying to get into your system, and they will destroy the internal system. So and these types of entities, or these types of businesses that are creating software, those are the ones that are really attracting international investors. So you have your two types of investors there. And then as far as equity versus non-equity investments, that's another interesting topic, right? So small business might think, okay, well, do I have to give up my equity in order for me to receive the money? Well, what about if the company can actually pay the investor off within a year or 3 years or 5 years? Something, if the company's able to, or it believes it can, but it wants to preserve its equity, they can always engage with the investor through a convertible note. That's another security, if you will, that's governed under the SEC. A convertible note is exactly that. Say, Joe, I give you $10 million, and you say, Kelly, I'm going to pay this back to you in 3 years. The third year comes by and you're unable to pay. At that third year, my 10 million will convert into equity. So we give you enough time for the company to pay back the investor. The other way that a company, a small business, can take investment money from an investor is actually just through a loan. Instead of going to a conventional bank, instead of going to a traditional bank and trying to get a loan through those financial institutes, they can actually attract an investor and say, we're happy to pay you. We'll take a loan, and we're happy to pay you an interest rate on that. Plus, we're happy to pay you monthly payments that are going to be within the capacity of the small business to pay the investor back. So it's not always a matter of giving up your equity. There are other options as well.
Mm. I have a question about something you mentioned. So these, you wrote, look, I'm a nerd. I write things down. Venture capitalist. And you said is 1 million and more is when a whole bunch of them gather their money, and that's how they go into these huge deals. So you mentioned say a corporation or a group of them in the UK. What protections do US businesses have if they do take on one of their offers and they're based in the UK? I'm sure the FCC has limitations, but is there some type of international law that gives us protection?
Absolutely not.
Oh man.
I know exactly. So
I really thought you were going to say one.
I know,
Maybe
I
one.
know. I threw you off there, darling.
Yeah.
I think the protection really comes through the contracts that are drafted and that are signed between the parties. That will absolutely give a venture capitalist, or sorry, a small business more protection. And when a business is at that level where they are attracting venture capitalists, then they know at that time that they will at some point lose a massive percentage of the company, right? So the VCs, that's what the common word for them is. So VCs, they know if they're going to invest in a company, one, they do months and months of research into that company. Two, they want to make sure that this is absolutely a company that is going to fit within their portfolio. And three, they want to make sure that they want their money back, right? ROI, how quickly can I get my money back? And if that means investing in the company, um, and maybe in 3 to 5 years taking it public and cashing out, then that's what the VCs are going to do. And at that point, the small business owner really doesn't have a say. It's a give and take. But then again, Dali, would you rather have, a 20% of $100 million, or do you want 100% of nothing?
Yeah, exactly. Great
100%.
point. Yeah,
Always.
right. Yeah,
Joe,
absolutely. Who wouldn't, right? And that's
Joe, you
and
can't
that's
do math.
why. but but to your point is that's why it's so important to do the research before you go into business with anyone. And I also believe, from what I've noticed, that these big pools of people who need these venture capitalists carry a certain reputation too. So it's easier to go and ask around and find out how well people work with them and all of that good stuff. There's a question from Laura. Thank you, Laura, for tuning in. She's another one of our co-hosts. She wants to know, how do you become a venture capitalist? Good
You
question.
make a lot of money.
Yeah, you
You-
got to have a lot of dough.
you have to have enough money that if you do invest anywhere, you're not, and you don't get a return on your money, that you are able to sustain that loss. Right. So you actually have to be an accredited investor. That's another defined term under the SEC, where there's a certain amount of money. If you lose it, it's not going to affect your livelihood. So again, Laura, thank you for asking that question, because it goes back to making a lot of money.
And I
Right.
want to point out that you talked about the accredited and unaccredited investors last month. So if you want to know what she educated us on, go back to that episode. It's on all of our platforms.
Yes, and that, I think that's very important, and that's a good question, because as small businesses start to grow and expand their business, they want to seek more investments into the firm. But how do you protect yourself? So what I suggest when the question comes up is like whether they want to attract angels or venture capitalists or any other type of investment, that they have to be working with an attorney. They have to be working with Kelly, because it's so difficult. And believe me, I tried that. It's so difficult to attract these people and be so aware, so they don't take a bite of the company that you have, and all of a sudden you are working for peanuts, and the whole thing is gone. So yes, there is a lot of intricacies on this. But one question that before we go is I think I asked you this before, but I would like to re-emphasize. When someone starts a corporation, and we all get these beautiful packages, binders with a bunch of stock in it. They look really
that you
nice.
never open ever.
Well, those of us who do, they just start writing checks to people. So it's like, but I know there is a law and a process on how to issue this stock, even if it's just a one-person corporation. Can you cover that a little bit on that?
Absolutely, Joe. This again falls under the SEC, and it is an actual crime. It's a crime to issue stock to someone for cash without registering with the SEC. And Dali, you're right. I spoke about exactly this topic last time I was on the show. But briefly, if a company, say you have two founders, and you both are going to have stock, well, you have to either register with the SEC, which is very, very expensive, or you have to apply exemptions. So I'm going to issue you stock, Joe, and I'm going to have some stock, and Dali's going to have some stock, and we need a shareholder agreement. In the shareholder agreement, there will be exemptions that the offering of the stock will fall under. So that way, uh, you're not committing any crimes. You're not going to be hauled away to jail, and you don't have to pay a fine either. So without having a shareholder agreement with exemptions in there, and someone gives you stock, that in itself is a illegal action.
And thank you for the
Yes.
clarification, because this is a common practice for a lot of people who start corporations, and they just want, because the stock certificates come in with the package, with the
Yes,
binder. So it's like, thank you for the clarification. Any last minute questions, Dali, before we go?
Yeah, you said something that it's very, very expensive to register with the FCC. Can you give us an idea? Not that I'm going to do it or anything, because I don't have that type of cash, but I'm curious, how much are we talking?
It's literally like doing a mini IPO, and you're talking about
gosh.
at least $2, $3, $400,000. So if you have that stashed away, you can absolutely register with the SEC.
That's peanuts for Dali.
Right. I know. I thought so. But this
I
brings
wish.
me to, I think, a topic for next time, Joe, which is going to be, again, on the dovetails of what we're talking about, is, well, how do you attract an investor? What documents do you need to provide the investor so you don't look like amateurs? Because you only get one shot to
That's
get
correct.
in front of a serious investor. And all investors, they see the same legal documents over and over again. So they know and they're comfortable with these sets of documents. And if you don't provide them those documents, they don't have time to sit around and listen to you. They have thousands of business plans thrown at them on a weekly basis. So how do you sift through those, right? So you want to make sure that you stand out, that you attract their attention right off the get-go, that you know exactly what you're talking about, because you're going to be providing them with this package. So I would love to talk about what's included in that package.
Deal. We'll cover that next time. And for now, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you very much, Kelly, for, again, an awesome coverage of the investment world, and which is very helpful for business owners.
Absolutely. Do
Dali?
I have a second to share that joke with you?
Oh my gosh, yes, please. Yes.
I was just going to remind her.
Thank you, Dali. So there's a teacher, there's a CPA, and then there's a lawyer. And the question posed to all three is, what do you get if you add 5 plus 2? The teacher goes, oh, definitely that's 7. That is 7, right? And then the CPA goes, oh, it could be 6.5. It could be 7. I really have to run the numbers. The lawyer goes, how much do you want it to be?
I like that one.
There you go.
That's
Thank you.
That's my kind of math.
Exactly. I got you, Joe. I got you.
Be careful.
Thank you again.
Well, Dali, I'll give it back to you to close the show. Thank you, Kelly. And we'll try, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much, Kelly and Joe. I love this segment, and I hope that those of you watching have taken a lot of value away from it. And we're here every Friday, so don't forget to tune in. And you know what? Go back through our channel, wherever it is you're watching us or listening. Go back and look at the titles and listen to some of our old segments. But as always, we're very, very grateful to have you here, and thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.